I never expected a routine medical appointment to completely upend my life. I'm Rebecca, 50 years old, married to David for 18. What started as bladder issues turned into something that would make me question everything I thought I knew about desire, professional boundaries, and the dangerous territory between doctor and patient. It began with symptoms I couldn't ignore anymore. Frequent urination, discomfort, the kind of intimate problems that make you avoid doctors until you absolutely can't. My regular physician referred me to a urologist, and that's when I met Dr. Marcus Chen. Walking into his office that Tuesday morning, I expected some older clinical doctor who'd make this embarrassing experience as quick and impersonal as possible. Instead, the man who stood up from behind the desk made my breath catch in my throat. Chen was maybe 28, with dark hair, intelligent brown eyes, behind stylish glasses, and the kind of confident demeanor that comes with knowing you're excellent at what you do. He was tall, lean, wearing a crisp white coat over a blue dress shirt that showed off his athletic build. "Mrs. Harrison," he said, extending his hand with a warm smile. "I'm Dr. Chen. Please have a seat." When our hands touched during the introduction, I felt an unexpected jolt. His grip was firm, professional, but there was something in the way he looked at me, not through me, like most doctors, but really seeing me. "I understand you've been having some urinary issues," he said, settling behind his desk with my file. "Can you tell me about your symptoms?" Heat crept up my neck as I described my problems, but Dr. Chen listened intently, nodding, asking follow-up questions that made me feel heard rather than embarrassed. "These symptoms are more common than you might think, especially for women your age," he said gently. "We'll need to do some tests to determine the exact cause, but I want to assure you that most urological issues are very treatable." The way he said "women your age" wasn't dismissive, it was reassuring, almost protective. And when he smiled, something fluttered in my stomach that I hadn't felt in years. "I'd like to do a physical examination today, if that's okay," he continued. "My nurse will prepare you, and I'll step out while you get ready." 20 minutes later, I was lying on the examination table in a hospital gown that barely covered anything, my heart racing for reasons that had nothing to do with medical anxiety. When Dr. Chen knocked and entered, his professional demeanor was perfect, but I caught the way his eyes briefly took in my exposed legs before focusing on my face. "I'm going to examine your abdomen first," he said, moving to wash his hands. "Just try to relax." If only he knew what his presence was doing to me. He approached the table, and I could smell his cologne, something subtle and expensive that made me dizzy. When he placed his hands on my abdomen, his touch was gentle but firm, fingers pressing systematically as he felt for abnormality. "Any pain here?" he asked, his hands moving lower. "No," I managed, trying to ignore how his touch was sending electricity through my body. His examination was thorough, professional, but every time his fingers pressed against my skin, I felt heat pooling in places it should. When he reached the area just above my pelvic bone, I couldn't suppress a small gasp. "Did that hurt?" he asked, his voice softer now, concerned. "No, it's fine," I whispered, my voice breathless. His hands stilled for a moment, and when I looked up, his brown eyes met mine. Something passed between us, awareness, attraction, danger. The air in the small examination room felt thick, charged with an energy that had nothing to do with medicine. Mrs. Harrison, he said quietly, his hands still resting on my abdomen. I need to do a more detailed examination. Are you comfortable proceeding? The way he asked, so gentle, so concerned for my comfort, made my heart race even faster. I nodded, not trusting my voice. What happened next would change everything between us. His examination became more intimate, more focused, and with each touch, each gentle movement of his skilled hands, the line between medical procedure and something else entirely began to blur. I found myself responding to him in ways that had nothing to do with medical necessity and everything to do with the desire I'd been suppressing for years in my stale marriage. Your body is responding very well to the examination, he said softly, and I wondered if he meant medically or something else. When our eyes met again, I saw my own desire reflected in his gaze. The professional mask had slipped, just slightly, revealing something hungry and dangerous underneath. Dr. Chen, I whispered. Marcus, he corrected, his voice raw. When we're alone like this, call me Marcus. The examination continued, but the boundaries between doctor and patient, between propriety and desire, were dissolving with every passing moment. By the time he finished, we were both breathing harder than we should have been, both acutely aware that something had shifted between us. I'll need to see you again next week, he said, as I sat up, pulling the gown closed with shaking hands. For follow-up tests. Yes, I agreed, though we both knew the follow-up had nothing to do with my medical condition and everything to do with what was happening between us. As I dressed and left his office, I knew I was walking into dangerous territory, but for the first time in years, I felt completely, thrillingly alive. David was waiting at home with dinner and his usual distracted small talk about his day at the law firm. As he droned on about cases and clients, I found myself thinking about Dr. Chen's hands, his voice calling me by my first name, the way he'd looked at me like I was something precious and forbidden. What was I getting myself into? Part 2. Crossing professional lines. The week dragged by like torture. Every moment, I found myself thinking about Dr. Chen, Marcus, and that examination. The way his hands had felt on my skin, the intensity in his eyes, how my name sounded when he said it. David noticed my distraction. You've been quiet lately, he said over breakfast Friday morning. Everything okay with the doctor visit? Fine, I lied, stirring my coffee. Just routine stuff. If only he knew how unroutine it had been. Tuesday couldn't come fast enough. I spent extra time getting ready, chose my best lingerie underneath my clothes, applied perfume, styled my hair. I told myself it was just to feel confident, but I knew better. Dr. Chen's office looked the same, but everything felt different. When he called my name in the waiting room, our eyes met and held for a moment longer than professional. Rebecca, he said softly, using my first name immediately this time. Come in. In his office, the tension was immediate and electric. How have you been feeling? He asked, but his eyes said he was asking about more than my medical symptoms. Better, I said, but I've been thinking about our last appointment. He leaned forward, his voice dropping. So have I. I haven't been able to stop thinking about it, actually. The admission hung between us like a confession. That's not very professional of you, doctor, I said, my voice teasing but breathless. No, he agreed, standing up. It's not, but I'm finding it hard to be professional around you. He moved to the examination room door and locked it, something he hadn't done before. The click echoed in the small space. Today's examination will be more thorough, he said, his voice rougher now. I want to make sure we address all your concerns. I nodded, not trusting my voice as I moved to the examination table. This time, when I changed into the gown, I was hyper aware of every movement, knowing he was just outside the door. When he entered, the air felt charged with possibility. Lie back, he said, his voice gentle but commanding. His hands started at my shoulders this time, checking lymph nodes, he claimed, but the touch felt more like a caress. His fingers traced along my collarbone, down to where the gown opened, and I couldn't suppress the soft sigh that escaped my lips. Your heart rate is elevated, he observed, his stethoscope moving across my chest. Is that unusual? I whispered. Not given the circumstances, he replied, his eyes meeting mine. His examination grew bolder, his touches lingering longer than medically necessary. When his hand moved to my inner thigh, ostensibly checking for swollen lymph nodes, I gasped audibly. Dr. Chen, Marcus, he corrected, his hand stilling on my leg. And Rebecca, I need you to know that what I'm feeling right now has nothing to do with medicine. What are you feeling? I asked, my voice barely audible. Instead of answering with words, he leaned down and pressed his lips softly to my forehead, then my cheek, then the corner of my mouth. It was gentle, questioning, giving me every opportunity to stop him. I didn't. When our lips finally met, it was electric. 18 years of marriage, and I'd never been kissed like this, with such want, such careful passion. This is insane, I whispered against his mouth. I know, he breathed, but I can't seem to care. His hands moved to frame my face as he kissed me deeper, and I felt more alive than I had in decades. All the pretense of medical examination was gone now. This was pure desire, pure connection between two people who'd found something unexpected. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. Rebecca, he said, his voice rough with want. I could lose my license for this. I know, I whispered. I could lose my marriage. We stared at each other, both knowing we were at a crossroads that would change every. I need to see you again, he said finally. Not here, not as your doctor. Where? I asked, already knowing I'd say yes to whatever he suggested. My apartment, this weekend. David's out of town on business, right? I had mentioned David's conference during our first appointment. The fact that Marcus remembered made my pulse quicken. Yes, I said. He leaves Saturday morning. Saturday evening then. I'll text you the address. As I dressed and prepared to leave, the weight of what we were planning settled over me. This wasn't just crossing professional boundaries anymore. This was about to become a full-blown affair. But as I looked at Marcus, saw the desire and tenderness in his eyes, I knew I was already too far gone to turn back. Saturday, I confirmed, and walked out of his office, knowing that by the weekend, everything in my life would be different.